I will start off tonight with the very first sentences from Obama's inaugural address. My fellow citizens, I stand here today humbled by the task before us, grateful for the trust you have bestowed, mindful of the sacrifices borne by our ancestors. I thank President Bush for his service to the nation, as well as the generosity and cooperation he has shown throughout this transition. You know, perhaps that very first sentence should give some of us pause in terms of public diplomacy. I've listened to a lot of inaugural speeches from past presidents. You know, I've lived long enough to hear some of them live on television and so on. And essentially they're all the same. No matter what is being said in those speeches, it is all about cooperation, you know, getting the people together. We, the people, you know, have to make it all better, and better times are ahead. We're facing hard times and so on. This is nothing new. So I would just like to add, probably Obama wasn't elected on a platform of cooperation with the Bush regime in the first place. And this inaugural speech basically didn't have to contain a great big thank you to President Bush in the first place. This being said, let's move back to the situation in Gaza and Obama's silence regarding that issue. Now, he will not be silenced much longer. He will have his own take on it, and we shall see how the situation works out. My take on this whole thing is that things will just simply continue the way they have been in terms of public diplomacy. So I don't have much hope for that situation over there, because U.S. foreign policy has essentially remained the same for the past 50 years or so. And I really don't see any change coming from Obama or his cabinet in that direction. But here it goes. There is a very good article by Gabriel Kolko. It's called Understanding Gaza. How will history describe the Israeli war against the Palestinians in Gaza? Another Holocaust, this time perpetrated by the descendants of the victims? An election ploy by ambitious Israeli politicians to win votes in the February 10th elections there? A test range for new American weapons? Or an effort to lock in the new Obama administration into an anti-Iranian position? An attempt to establish its military credibility after its disastrous defeat in the war with Hezbollah in Lebanon in 2006. Perhaps all of these and more. One thing is certain. Israel has killed at least 100 Palestinians for each of its own claimed losses. A vast disproportion that has produced horror in much of the world, creating a new cause which has mobilized countless numbers of people, possibly as strong as the Vietnam War movement. It has made itself a pariah nation, save in the United States and a few other countries. Above all, it has inflamed the entire Muslim world. As Bruce Riedel, a hawk who held senior positions in the CIA for nearly 30 years and is now one of President Obama's many advisors, has just written, "The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a central, all-consuming issue for Al-Qaeda, and Muslims feel a profound sense of wrong about the creation of Israel that infuses every aspect of thinking and activities and has become a rallying cry used to convince the Ummah of the righteousness of Al-Qaeda's cause." That was before Gaza. Much of the world now detests Israel, but most it will live for many years to come with the consequences of Israel's atrocities recently. Muslim extremists will now become much stronger as a result of this. Charges of war crimes are now being leveled, and justifiably so, at the Israelis, many of whom themselves came from families that suffered in the hands of the Nazis 60 years ago, and now claim that the Holocaust was the only tragedy, as if the more numerous deaths of other people throughout the world count for nothing. The United Nations and human rights groups are demanding that Israel be brought to justice for what now accounts to having killed over 1,300 Gazans, at least 1/3 to 1/2 of them civilians with no connection to Hamas, immense firepower, and the use of illegal weapons, including phosphorus weapons, which are illegal to be used within civilian parameters. It will now, Israel that is, it will now have to live with the geopolitical consequences in that region. Israel has perhaps irreparably imperiled its relations with the neighboring Arab states and other Muslim nations. Qatar and Mauritania have already revoked their diplomatic relations with Israel, less because the ruling classes in these nations want to penalize Israel, but because the Arab masses and populations demand it, imperiling their own positions as rulers. Even more important, although the United States has loyally supported Israel for decades, giving it gifts of modern arms and giving it diplomatic protection, it is now in an economic crisis and needs Arab money, not to mention oil imports, more than ever. The stability of this crucial alliance is now in question. Much of this cult of machismo, called self-defense, characterized by some idealists on the left as well, including David Ben-Gurion, and he actually was somewhat of a militant as well. Today, Israel is a regional Sparta, armed with the most modern military and nuclear weapons that you can think of, giving it a virtual monopoly in that region, and one that will be challenged. Yuri Avnei, a leading Israeli anti-war activist, has just written that hundreds of millions of Arabs around us, will they see the Hamas fighters as the heroes of the Arab nation? Or will they see their own regimes in their nakedness, cringing, corrupt, and treacherous? In coming years, it will become apparent that this war was sheer madness. We are living through yet another great tragedy, and tragedies have been the staple of world history for centuries. Now, former victims and their descendants are the executioners.